Okay, so today we're going to talk about speech services and how you can make your applications interactive using those services. Before we move to the session, I would love to thank our sponsors. They're all amazing. Without them, this event wouldn't be possible. So thanks to them. They are great. Definitely check them out. And so for everyone who doesn't know me, here's a couple of things about me. My name is Veronika Kolesnikova. I am twice Microsoft MVP in AI. I just got my second Microsoft MVP award just in July, last month. Yes. I have a master's degree in information technology. I started my career as a quality assurance engineer, and then I moved to development. And now I have probably around 7 years of development experience. Mostly, I was working with and still working with Microsoft technologies like C#, .NET, SQL, Xamarin. I love machine learning. I love cognitive services. But recently, I started also learning more about Node.js and working with that, learning about AWS and other offerings there. And in general, I just love learning new technology. It is super fun. And my hobbies are dancing, traveling, and aerial yoga. You can ask questions about my hobby, but after the session, but during the session, feel free to ask questions about the content, or let me know if you want me to clarify something. And here's the agenda for next probably 40 to 50 minutes. I'll try to kind of combine everything and kind of go through that as fast as I can, but at the same time, I will make sure that it is not too fast. But I'll try to leave some time for questions in the end, so all questions can be answered. But I'll start with basics of Microsoft Cognitive Services, and then I will provide a general overview of speech services. Then we'll move to custom speech services, and then I'll talk a little bit about the speech services SDK. And then we'll kind of compare a little bit offerings from other companies, like Google and Amazon, so we at least know what is happening on the market. And after that, we'll move to demo. And I actually have 4 parts of demo. Maybe we'll go through 1 or 2. We'll see. But yeah, let's get started. So what are Microsoft Cognitive Services? And how speech services related to cognitive services? Actually, speech services, they are part of Microsoft Cognitive Services. And cognitive services, they are basically sets of APIs and SDKs that are available for us developers who probably doesn't have enough experience in machine learning or doesn't have background, specific education. But I don't want to limit it to people without special education, because anyone can use cognitive services to add that machine learning capabilities to all kinds of applications. It doesn't matter if you hardcore iOS developer or you can't live without Python. You can use cognitive services everywhere in all kinds of applications. You just need to get the key from Azure and also the endpoint that you can use, and then use the endpoint and the key. You can access those cognitive services using REST API. You just need, in most cases, you just need a couple of lines of code in order to connect your cognitive services to your application. Those services, they are amazing. They were actually developed by professional Microsoft researchers, people who actually got their degree in machine learning, and they have great experience. That's why they can produce effective models for everyone to use, and those models are really accessible for everyone. They are well tested, they are well maintained, they keep improving the models, adding data. So those are amazing. They have a great documentation. I know it's really hard to get good documentation for some things, especially in tech field, because we're just so busy writing code and creating something new that we don't have time to work on documentation. But Microsoft has amazing documentation. It's all structured with great examples. All those content services, they are open source. So you can go and check how they all work. And if you see something that doesn't work and you know how to fix, definitely submit your pull request. Microsoft will be super happy to have your code in their repos. And also, if you have any questions, there are Stack Overflow options, user voice, and other support groups for newbies or just people with questions. So let's move forward to what is speech service or speech services. They are part of cognitive services. I already mentioned that. And those services, they are working with voice and speech and that audio information that your users might share with your application. Speech services are powered by speech technologies used in products like Cortana and Microsoft Office. That is kind of going back to the fact that those models, they're not just developed once and we just use them forever. They are constantly trained and retrained, so they're becoming better and better, and especially when they use data from applications like Cortana and Microsoft Office, so they're receiving lots and lots of data that can actually be used for improving the models. So before it became just one speech service, they were separate services available, and it was Bing Speech API, translator speech, custom speech, and custom voice. But now Microsoft combined all those services into one, and it's a great idea. They noticed that usually when developers use speech services, they don't use just one, they use several of them. And the complication there is that for each service, you are getting the endpoint and you are getting a key. So you kind of need to think about maintaining them. Maybe you need to refresh those keys, or you need to make sure that everything goes to right place. It sometimes might be a little tricky to remember what's going on there and what it goes there. So it is amazing that they combine them all together, and now we have only one endpoint and one key. Actually, technically, you have two keys, but one is kind of backup. Because usually you just need one key. All those speech services or one speech service, they are available on Azure. They have trial versions for people who don't have Azure, or maybe they just want to try the service really quick before actually committing it to it. And I think the trial period is 7 days. So you definitely can get the endpoint and the key, test it really quick, maybe check some samples online before actually moving forward with implementing it into your application. Now let's talk about speech services features. There are three main features in speech services. And the first one is speech to text. It transcribes continuous real-time speech to text, and there are several options there. So it depends on what kind of application you have. Sometimes you need your user to continuously speak to your application and provide some kind of voice input. So speech-to-text capabilities can kind of keep that microphone open and keep listening and transcribing speech-to-text within some period of time. If it's just a quick response from your user, then you can just listen once, transcribe, and just stop it. You know, it is an Azure resource, cloud resource. So if it's constantly listening, it is actually acquiring some cost. So if you don't need the microphone to be open and constantly listening, then don't use that functionality. Just listen at once and stop. If your user is not interacting with your application directly, if you just have those audio files with some speech information, you can use those. So you can batch transcribe. It can batch transcribe speech from audio recordings. You just feed in those recordings to the service, and it will transcribe those recordings. You can then save the text somewhere, or you can just return it to user and forget about it. Speech to text supports intermediate results. That means so it is transcribing speech to text, and it is kind of applying its best guess. But if something change according to context, it can kind of go back and change that word based on the context. So that is really cool. It is pretty close usually. It depends on what kind of text you have, what kind of speech. So usually transcription is super close. And then it also has end of speech detection. So when you are continuously listening to your user, if you don't stop after just one phrase, that it automatically can detect end of speech. So when the user stops talking and it is clearly end of the monologue, a dialogue, it can actually stop listening to save your resources and save you some money. And then next one is automatic text formatting. So it will include punctuation, pretty cool. And also it has profanity masking. Another cool thing is that you can use speech services with other cognitive services. So here I have LUIS, Language Understanding Intelligence Service, that is also cognitive service. But basically, LUIS doesn't work with speech directly. So you need to feed text to LUIS. And LUIS widely used in bots in different speech applications or kind of interactions in order to understand intent and kind of based on that intent provide information to users, or you can actually analyze the intent yourself, and based on that information provided by LUIS, you know what your user wants. So you are using speech to text, you are converting speech to text, and then you pass in the text to LUIS, and then LUIS analyzes and provides you information about the intent and some the values in this data, in this utterance, and you can work with those values. I am actually using Louis in my demo, so we'll see how actually two those cognitive services are connected and can be connected together and work in an application. So next one here is text-to-speech. And it is pretty straightforward. If you have text, it can convert it to speech, but there are also lots of options that you can use there. So text-to-speech provides neural text-to-speech voices nearly indistinguishable from human speech. Those neural voices, they're very high quality and they are really close to natural human speech. So they don't have a lot of those neural voices. I think last time when I checked, they had 12, but they keep adding new voices, with different genders, female and male voices, different languages. So it's really cool. They are a little more expensive, but they are super close to how we humans speak. But if you check those neural voices and you didn't see something that was suitable for your application, maybe maybe you didn't find a language, or you didn't see just right combination of factors, then they have a huge library of just regular machine voices. They are probably not as natural sounding, but they are pretty good. I think in most cases, those just regular voices, they are good enough. They're not too robotic, but they're not that close to natural voices. And they offer multiple genders and different dialects and just a huge variety of different languages. So it is totally up to you what voice to choose, and then you can pick and choose and combine several of those if you want to. Text-to-speech supports plain text input, so you can just either feed text right from user's input or submit files with text, and it will convert text to speech. Or it can also support speech synthesis markup language, or SSML. And SSML is not something specific to Microsoft technologies. It is kind of standard. So even if you have SSML from other tools or from other technology stack that you're using, you can pass it directly to speech services and it will understand it. And also you can use it in different environments and different setups, so it's super convenient. Next feature here is a speech translation. It can translate streaming audio in near real time, and it is amazing what they did, because before, I think even maybe last year or less than 2 years ago, when they just released the speech services, it was a little tricky there. So what was happening, they had a speech, they had to convert it to text and then translate the text into a new language, so it was text information, and then they took that translated text and converted it to speech. So it was a lengthy process. It was really time consuming. It was definitely resource consuming, so not the best option there. But now it is amazing because they are translating speech to speech directly, so they eliminated that text completely, although you still have an option to return it as text if you need to. Here you can see that it provides results as text or synthesized speech. In most of cases, you probably would prefer synthesized speech, but sometimes, the audio device is off, so user can speak to your application, but then your application only can return text, so that's totally fine. It can also process recorded speech, so it's again kind of all features of speech services. You can either feed right from your microphone or just provide recordings, and it will work with those recordings. Okay, now let's move to custom speech services. If you checked everything, what is available out of the box, and you're like, yeah, that is kind of cool, but not exactly 100% what I want for my application, I have good news for you. They have custom speech services, so you can customize speech services. You can use custom voice and custom speech. And that is great because you are not building the model right from scratch. You are using those models that are already trained, used. They were developed specifically for speech and for those kinds of applications. But on top of those models, you are providing additional information, so you can use more customized options that are always great because they are using your data and they are specific to your application. So you can customize a bunch of things there. First thing is you can customize acoustic model. For example, if you know that your application is going to be used in noisy settings, maybe in factories, or people use it in traffic in, I don't know, busy cities, then you can actually customize acoustic model. So your speech services will determine what is just noise and it shouldn't pay attention to it, and what is actually speech that it needs to translate or transcribe. Pretty cool. Next one here is language model. We all have our little words or abbreviations. It depends on region where you live or work that you do. Every business has its own little abbreviations or specific terms and words. And sometimes generally available out-of-the-box speech service doesn't recognize those words. Sometimes it's fine if it is not so important to recognize everything. It's up to you. You need to decide what is your threshold there. But if it's important if you use those terms and words a lot and it is important to know, then you definitely want to customize your speech service with those terms and specific words, so your application can understand speech correctly. Next one is pronunciation model, and that is really important, especially if you are releasing application that is going to be used in different areas, different regions, maybe even all over the world. We all have different pronunciation. People from different countries have different pronunciation. People from different regions have different pronunciation. So it is important for speech services to understand different ways of pronouncing words, maybe different accents. It is, in general, it is pretty good with understanding different pronunciations, but maybe something specific to your business that out-of-the-box speech service doesn't understand. then you can customize the pronunciation model for that. And then the last one here, and I think this is the coolest customization option. It is a voice font. So as I mentioned before, it has a million different languages and voices, supports different genders. So that is amazing. And don't quote me on the million thing, because I'm not sure how many different voices they have, but yeah. But actually, if you're like, yeah, those voices are cool, but our users, they're so used to our, for example, office manager voice, they are communicating with that person all the time, so they are familiar with that voice. Or maybe you have some kind of ad with a person there and people are used to that specific voice. You can actually train speech services to speak back in that voice. And that is really cool. You just upload in a bunch of audio files with that voice, and it will process it and create that specific voice font. There are several restrictions around that. You can just grab people's voices and use them in your applications. So definitely make sure that person is giving their voice without any pressure, and they know that you're using their voice. So be mindful about that. Now let's move to Speech Devices SDK. Really quick here, Microsoft partnered with hardware company called Rubo, and Rubo actually released a bunch of devices that are specifically supporting Speech Devices SDK. Speech Devices SDK can help you rapidly test new voice scenarios. It can help you to create an exceptional user experience for your customers. So if you know what Echo Dot for Alexa is, that is a specific device for Alexa. Rubo is a specific device for Speech Devices SDK. So you can customize voice font. You can actually use your custom speech services and create specific applications for that hardware. And it is really cool. Definitely check it out if you have an option. Okay, now let's move to Google options. So I'm actually going to cover two competitors, because it's always good to know what is out there, what other companies are offering, so you can pick and choose what you want. And sometimes you have client restrictions, or you just have your personal preference. So it's just good to know what is available. And I start with Google Cloud Speech Services. Let's go here. So they also have speech to text option. It can recognize 120 languages and variants. There might be more, because they keep improving. Their services. All companies, they are constantly working on their offerings. So definitely go back and check what's going on, what the news are. It is great to be up to date with what's happening. It can automatically identify spoken language. So this part is really cool, and that thing, in my opinion, is a little better than Microsoft offering. So Microsoft didn't have that spoken language identification just last year. Now they have it, but it's a little tricky. So there are some restrictions, but there are also some workarounds. So don't be discouraged. but Google is really great with the language identification. Next one here, it returns text transcription in real time for short form and long form audio. So that is the same. You can either just listen for one phrase and transcribe it, or you can just keep that mic open and constantly listen and transcribe it on the fly. It automatically transcribes proper nouns and context-specific formatting. So that is like Microsoft. That is pretty standard. It would be, I actually personally would be really surprised that it wouldn't do it, because I think it's like the baseline for speech-to-text conversion. Next one here is text-to-speech. It offers more than 100 different voices, different languages, different genders, different dialects. So we all know about that. It also offers access to more than 50 WaveNet voices. So Microsoft calls them neural voices. Google calls them WaveNet voices. They have a lot of them available, a little more than Microsoft offers. But you need to check what is more important for you. You need to check the prices for those WaveNet and neural voices. So it's totally up to you. Sometimes it is important to have that neural voice. Sometimes it is not that critical. So definitely choose for yourself. And then it supports any application or device that can send a REST or gRPC. That is pretty standard too. Everything is microservice now or API. So we are living in this world where it is really important to have API connection or gRPC or RPC connection. Next here is translation, and we all know about Google Translation. It's been around for years and years and years, so they are pretty good at it. It supports more than 100 different languages. It can detect language. It seamlessly scale, but the scaling part is not something unusual, because when you use cloud technologies, they are all scaling, scale up and scale down. That is just the nature of the cloud. And then they also support AutoML translation. That is kind of interesting, but I think so Microsoft just doesn't say that they're using AutoML, but AutoML is not something specific to Google. That is just kind of a framework to make your training of your models more efficient. So you don't have to spend hours and hours trying to figure out what is the best model for your data. When you train your machine learning model, kind of supports your the model type and trains it automatically, and you don't have to spend so much time thinking about models and machine learning. So that is, I think it sounds cool, but actually it is pretty normal, because they already pre-built models for you and you are just training on top of those models. So AutoML is for that. And it also integrates with other Google devices and services. And that is also pretty straightforward, because when you're using offerings from one company, they usually are integrated really seamlessly together. Yeah, so that's about Google Translation. Definitely check it out if you have a chance. And now we'll move to Amazon Speech Services. I personally haven't used those offerings, but I got that feeling from their documentation that they are a little behind Microsoft and Google. Maybe their documentation is confusing, but it's really hard to find any kind of information. And whatever I found, I got that feeling from there that it's a little behind. But if you use Amazon speech services, definitely let me know. I definitely want to hear from people who actually used it, so I'm not spreading misinformation here. Okay, so Amazon offers Amazon Transcribe, that is speech to text transcription. It adds punctuation and formatting, same as Google and Microsoft. It has an option to add custom vocabulary. It recognizes multiple speakers. So before, maybe like last year, Microsoft didn't support that, but now they do. So I think all offerings that I was talking about, they all actually have that option to recognize multiple speakers and multiple channels. It can transcribe audio to text in real time, as other tools out there. And then the next one here that I found, that is Amazon Polly. That is basically text-to-speech translation. So they also have natural sounding voices. They don't separate those neural or WaveNet voices from other voices, from like normal computer-ish voices. They just say they're all natural sounding. You can customize speech output, so you can save those speech outputs into files and then store them somewhere, or you can just provide an output directly to your user and just forget about that speech that is there if you don't want to store it. And also it supports real-time streaming. So if you type in user type and then send it to that service, it will read it right from the screen. Okay, and now finally, let's move to demo and see how Microsoft Speech Services work and what are the offerings there. But before we move to demo, I just want to check if you have any questions there. Stop sharing for a second to check the questions. Okay, I don't see any questions, but if you have any questions, definitely put them in the chat. I hope you can still hear me and everything is clear. But yeah, let's move to the demo because we don't have that much time. So here I have, I just created the resource that is speech services resource. Let me show you how I did that. So you go create, and I hope you all know that that is Azure portal. I don't need to introduce you to Azure. If I do, yeah, that is Azure portal. Super convenient. So you click here on create a resource, you type speech. So you have an option, create speech to text, create, if you just need that one feature and you're sure you don't need anything else, you can create that one. But it is more convenient if you create a speech here, speech resource. You are creating it. They have links there with documentation and instructions and samples, so you can see how it all works. Or you can actually go to Cognitive Services portal. You just basically search Microsoft Cognitive Services. They have portal, and they have some visual samples available there, so you can see how it works and what type of information it returns and gets, and just some already integrated samples. So here, as any resource, when you're creating it, you are adding the name, you're choosing location closer to your customers, and then the pricing tier. In my subscription, or I think actually in any subscription, you can have only one free, and it's not completely free, obviously, because you need to still pay for resource maintenance, some other stuff, but you can have only one that kind of free-ish resource, and then when you create a second one, third one, or the next one, you have to use the standard pricing tier. And here you have the link to the pricing details, so definitely check it out before creating the resource, so you won't have any surprises later. Then you are choosing resource group, creating a new one. I already have resource created. So yeah, that's how it looks. You have option to change the pricing tier. You have options to see the metrics, how it's used, to make sure that everything is connected, and basically the signal goes through and your resource is getting the information. Some logs and diagnostic, that is amazing. Some properties here. So you can see this resource group and their ID, and then quick start here. Actually, you need to definitely go to keys and endpoints. That's your best friend. So here you have all the information. You have 2 keys. You don't need to have 2 keys. One is kind of like a backup, and the endpoint that you need to use in your application. So let's go to the actual code, and here I have several examples available. First one is recognize once speech async. So it is just one phrase. The service is recognizing what's going on there, and it is not just, let me actually go there to see what's happening. So actually, that's this example where I'm using Louis. I'm using speech services to convert speech to text, and then I'm passing the text to Louis. And for Louis, you need to create a separate resource. If you're using several cognitive services, then now it's an option to create just one resource. It's called cognitive services, and then you'll have just one key for everything. But usually if you use just 1 or 2 resources, maybe it's easier to have separate resources, separate resource for speech and separate resource for Louis. And Louis also has a separate portal where you can customize it. So it's not only in Azure portal, you are not only getting the key, you are also has an option to customize it, and it is just is great. Definitely use the portal. It has all the information that you need for Louis and how to customize it and train it and check it, and even endpoints and keys for Louis. You can store them both in Azure portal and in Louis portal. And so yeah, what we are doing here, we are translating the speech to text, and then we are passing the text to Louis, and then if Louis recognizes intent as translate, it is here. So here we are actually parsing the output from Lewis. We are getting specific entities. We are trying to recognize what is the target language there and what is the text there. So the target language is what language we need to translate to, and then the text is actually what we need to translate. And by default, we're going to use English, and then we are just translating text. So that is not a part of speech, because that is just text translation. That is not an option available in cognitive services. And then we are synthesizing the speech. So there are a couple of options there. Here I am actually using that system library. So you either can use the cognitive services to translate that text result to speech, or if you know that your users already have that language pre-installed on their devices, then you can just use the system speech synthesis. You don't have to use that resource, and you don't have to pay that much money for Azure and for the speech services. So it's totally up to you, but yeah. And yeah, so we recognize the speech here and some output around that, but let me actually show how it works. Translate mother to German. So I hope you heard what's going on there. It said Mutter. I'm not a German speaker, so can't really tell you how to pronounce it. But we can see that output is from Luis, and it recognized the intent. It was translate. The score is really high, so it's pretty sure that it is actually translate, and we want it to translate. And then the entities, we have target language, it is German, and it is, again, very, very confident that that's the target language. And then the text is mother, and the score is high again. And why Lewis is so confident is that because I trained it really well on those entities. I made sure I tested several options in the portal, in Lewis portal. So it is recognizing the text and target language pretty good right now. So technically, the more you are using those cognitive services, the better they are getting. Including Lewis and speech services. Okay, so let me show you another demo that I have here. I have a bunch of them, and I don't think we're gonna go through all of them because I have, you can see I have 4 of them at the same time. Yeah, let's try this one. So actually this code is on my GitHub, so definitely go and check it out there. I'm not hiding it from people. I'm willing to share, and if you have any questions later on, definitely reach out to me. I'm really active on social media. I'm always on Twitter. Send me DMs, follow me there. Yeah, I'll be happy to chat. But now let's go and check that recognized language. And so what we do here is we are automatically detecting the language. And that is the tricky part that I was telling you, because you kind of have to provide a list of possible languages that it can recognize. So it is not perfect right now, but it is definitely better than it was before, and they keep working on that. So hopefully it will detect language automatically, and you don't have to provide the string with possible languages there. So yeah, we are passing the string with languages, and then we're passing a bunch of parameters. So here I have the settings. That is the endpoint. I'm not going to show it to you, but when you create your resource, you'll get your own endpoint and key. So you are passing it to the configuration, and you're passing that configuration to here, and you are asking your user to say something, and then it recognizes it. So this one is recognized once asynchronously. That means it listens only for one phrase, and it doesn't keep mic open for a lengthy for like longer period of time. It is just listens for one phrase and stops. But you can just use you can use other methods to actually continuously listen in to speech, and then and then we recognize, and then we are returning them information here. So that's the text that was recognized, and then the detected language. Let's try it super quick. Did I change it? Yes, I did. We started here. Здравствуйте, дорогие слушатели. So, so that is tricky. So I'm a native Russian speaker. So I said, hello, dear listeners, in Russian. So I recognize it's the language. It is just some tricky stuff here that I need to work on. That's the actual text, but because of the limitations and some language setup in this console application, that just returns it like that. But that actually, 3 words that I said in Russian, so those are actual words. I just need to work with the setup here a little bit. Okay, let me go back and check for questions. I'll stop sharing for a second. Okay. Thank you, Lauren. Yeah, my contact and my social media. Yes, I can do that. I can post my Twitter handle. It is breakpoint316. That's my Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn. I am Veronika Kolesnikova. That is not a really widespread name here in Boston. So definitely reach out to me online, and I'll be happy to answer all your future questions. But when you reach out to me on LinkedIn, definitely let me know where you're coming from and why you want to connect. Because it might be sometimes tricky, and I usually don't connect with people I don't personally know unless they let me know why they want to connect and how they know me. Okay, do we have any questions? Yeah, LinkedIn is really tricky, so just random people try to connect, and sometimes it's hard to determine if it's spam or people actually want to connect and have conversation. Yeah. Okay, do we have any questions, or I am gonna log out and I'll see you tomorrow. I have another session have another session going on tomorrow that will be completely different from today's session. I will be talking about AR and VR, augmented reality and virtual reality, and then I'll show you how it is implemented in mobile, how you can use Azure Spatial Anchors with Xamarin and create your mobile applications for AR. Okay, so we don't have any questions. Okay, I'm so happy. I'm glad, Laura, that you got some ideas. I am happy to be helpful. Let me know if you have any questions in the future. And for now, I think we are all set. Thank you so much for attending my session. That was great. I had fun, and I'll see some of you tomorrow, and have a nice event.